Hello everyone. Welcome to our other talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I'm the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
So if you're joining us for our other talk, then you already know that this is the talk we do once a month, every third Sunday morning for us. And we do this one as an alternative to our usual Sunday talk on Sunday evenings. So this one takes place at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time currently. And the one in the evening that we do weekly is at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Time. So you can join us for either or both of those, depending on what works for you, but we offer up both so that we can have as many cool people join us as possible. So if you're here live, thank you for joining us. And if you're watching on the replay, we're happy to have you here too. So, our YouTube spiel means that we invite you to do all those YouTube things like subscribing to our channel, perhaps, liking this video, especially, we find to be helpful, and commenting on the video if you like. Share with us your ideas, your opinions, offer up some questions, and either we or perhaps someone in the community will be happy to chime in and respond. What else? You can also share our content. We appreciate that too. You know, a lot of how we grow seems to be through word of mouth, which is interesting and pretty cool to watch and hear about. So thank you for that. Anything else I need to add, Mushtaq?
Um, we are still working on our fundraising. So remember, underneath couch cushions, in the pockets of old coats left for months and years in your closet, you can find loose change. And if you find loose change, feel free to send it to us.
Yep, we would definitely appreciate that. We don't want to put you out, but we do definitely appreciate the support. It
Yeah,
means a
it's
lot
what
to us.
keeps us going because um, everything is getting more expensive. We have to pay more for our Zoom account and for um, the various things that we have to do. Some of our equipment needs to be replaced. It's terrible and tedious, and we don't want to burden you with it. But the donations that so many of you so generously make is what allows us to do that.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
And of course, we do our one-on-ones or two-on-ones if you like. And
Yeah,
you
we'll
can
gang
find
up on you.
out. Yes. So for those who don't know, we do private sessions for one-on-one mentoring and coaching and that kind of thing in the work of personal transformation. So let's get started, shall
All
we?
right, let's get started.
So today is, a little bit of a history lesson, a little tiny bit of a geography lesson, but it's all about how the Sufi tradition, as we know, understand it, practice it, relate to it, is a very diverse tradition. It's based on a lot of melting pot ideas and practices and values, and we want to share a little bit about that today. So the topic we have on hand is the Sufi and the Silk Road. Now, where should we begin, Mushtaq?
Well, what is the Silk Road? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to pull up a map and show you exactly what the Silk Road is, so we can talk about it. Um, Let me know when y'all can see it.
Yep, I can see it, and James can see it, so we're good.
Okay, good. So, as you can see over here on the left part of the screen is where we think of the Silk Road starts. The Silk Road also starts over here on the right side of the screen.
Are you able to make
Oh
this
yeah, I can make
full
it
screen?
bigger. I just want the whole picture for a second.
Got it. And Osama's
And would you,
making.
yeah. So it starts or ends in Istanbul to the north and Cairo to the south. It's the main fork. Then it travels all over the place. The Silk Road is not a single road. It is a series of caravan routes that were incredibly important for a very long time. The Silk Road started before the Common Era. And it basically fell out of use in the late 1500s when ships got good enough to go around the Horn and get into Asia without having to traverse this incredibly dangerous path. But let me make
That's the
this,
Horn of Africa that you're
yeah.
talking about, right?
So let me make this bigger because I
There you
want you to see. So Istanbul, Cairo, Palmyra, Baghdad. And you'll notice here that it travels in a lot of different ways. The important parts are three cities, Merv, Bukhara, and Samarkand, that form this little triangle here.
So they're directly connected
They are
on the
directly
Silk Road.
connected. Why are these so important? Because this is not a unitary path. Everything from India, for instance, comes up through here. And everything from Iran comes up through here. Merv is an incredibly old city. It had been inhabited uh, for probably several hundred years BC. And during the height of the Silk Road, it was maybe the largest city in the world. It was then wiped out by the Mongols, and then a bunch of other people came in and decided that they wanted to wipe it out because the Mongols can't have all the fun, and now it's a ruin. But at this time, Merv had the most libraries of anywhere on the planet. It was a center of learning. The same was true of Bukhara and Samarkand. And so you had all of these things. You had stuff coming down from the north. So there's the north, there's the Ural Mountains up here, things coming down from what later became Russia and various other areas up here and moving down this way past the Ural Sea. And so this area right here, this little area, became a crossroads. And in them, you had all this trade from all over the known world at the time passing through it. And you also had people, and the people included scholars. It included various religious scholars as well as philosophers. And it included various mystical traditions moving through here. You had Buddhists, you had Hindus, you had Zoroastrians, which is very important. You had Muslims, of course. You had Christians. You had shamanists coming down from the north. And they all hung out in these cities and swapped knowledge with each other. And then as you move further south here, I had meant to pin some of the other important places along here, like where the Wudang temples were and all of that sort of thing. But you move through China and you get the second big branch here, one going up to Beijing and the other going, come back. Where are you?
It's probably to the left or to the right.
No, it was hiding. I know what happened. Okay, so
So I noticed that map was not necessarily an English map, but it
yeah,
really does a good job of showing like the whole length of the Silk Road.
yeah, it was the best one I could find.
Yeah.
Uh, and I have lost myself here. Okay, let me pull this up one more time.
There we are.
There we are.
All right. So we
Uh,
were talking about
we were talking about,
eastern part of the Silk Road, or
yeah,
what we might consider the eastern part of the Silk Road.
well, what we would consider because we're over here in the West.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the southern area here was Hongshu, which was at the time a very important area of China. But
So
yeah, it
Hangzhou,
had
yeah.
trillions of dollars of wealth and the knowledge of the ages traveling along this path, which didn't just include this, but uh, so down here you have Yemen. And of course, you have paths that go up here to Baghdad and then catch the Silk Road to go across in either direction. Tibet will show up at Bukhara and Samarkand. India will show up at Merv usually. Um, and basically, this became the main artery for the knowledge of the world at the time. And as I said, a lot of it was collected in Merv. Merv was the largest city in its time with the most libraries, the most schools, the most diverse philosophical schools going on. And it was within this milieu that the kind of Sufism we practice was born, which in many ways is radically different from what people have referred to as the Southern Sufis. So there we have it. That's what we're talking about today. Questions so far?
Or any
Mushtaq,
thoughts? Yeah.
Yes.
What? Oh,
when you say Southern Sufis, can you be more specific, sir? Wouldn't mind.
Basically the Sufis that hung out around Baghdad and down into India, who had one particular way of doing things, and then what we think of as, for lack of a better term, the Northern Sufis had a completely different way of doing things.
yeah. So it's kind of a catch-all term. It's
Yeah,
not
it's a
necessarily,
very gross generalization.
yeah, yeah. But it's a way of distinguishing, a certain flavor of Sufi tradition and practice and philosophy, and one that was quite different from that.
Yeah, one of the big differences is the
Yusuf has a
understand.
question before we move
Okay,
on. Hold
yes,
that thought on differences.
yeah.
Yusuf.
Yeah, Salam. Very interesting topic. Um, so Merv is a Persian city then?
It was mostly a Persian city. It was at one time part of Khorasan. At other times, it was held by the Turks. It passed through a lot of hands. The Arabs came in for a while. like every big city with vast wealth, everybody wanted to own it. So,
So where is it located today? I'm looking it up real
yeah,
quick.
today it is located in Turkmenistan, I believe,
Okay.
and it is just ruins.
Mm,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, it
And
was the
so,
capital city of several polities throughout its history. So,
Yeah.
just as Mushtaq was saying.
interesting. And so, the way, basically what you're saying is that the way that the Northern Sufis later developed was because of impact from other mystics along the Silk Road, like Zoroastrian influence and things along those lines that differed
Um,
it from traditional tasawwuf or Sufism.
yeah,
Or maybe you're going to go
I
more into
wouldn't
it.
say one is more traditional than the other. It's more uh, different approaches.
Mhm.
Uh, at the time, Baghdad was falling out of its place as the center of learning.
Mm.
And for various different reasons, much of which was political, that center of learning moved north where it could be safer, at least for a while. The number of Islamic scholars that came out of this area is vast, and some of them were quite famous.
Out of which area?
Out of the Silk Road cities,
Merv.
especially Merv, Bukhara, and Samarkand.
Okay. Yeah. Well, keep going. Very interesting. So, and if not, I'll also be doing. This gives me more stuff to do research on. So, thank you.
Good. Yeah, y'all should be checking this out because it's fascinating history. Like I said, the Silk Road goes back way before the Common Era. And the city of Merv especially is quite old and has gone through many iterations.
Any other questions before we move into discussing those differences? Nope, I think everyone's excited to talk about that.
Good. So, one of the main differences between what we think of as the Northern Sufis and the Southern Sufis is the
Quote unquote.
understanding
Yeah.
the understanding of fana, the understanding of annihilation, which is what the word actually means. And the Southern Sufis tended to look at it in 4 stages, which would start with fana fi sheikh, which is losing yourself in your teacher, becoming annihilated in the personality of the teacher. After which you would work on fana fi pir, which is losing yourself in the founder of your tariqah. Then fana fi rasul, which is to lose yourself in the personality of the prophet. And finally, fana fillah, which is to become dissolved into Allah. The Northern Sufis completely rejected this because they felt that dealing with the personalities of teachers, especially, could be an impediment to your path. So they had also 4 qualities of fana, 4 stages. The first is fana aham, which is it refers to the withdrawal of the desire for the world of bodies, for the world of egos, and breaking our dependence on that. breaking our dependence on the operating in the world through the illusion of egoism. And this is what we talk about with breaking one's mechanical conditioning. The second stage is fana-i afal, A-F-A-L. And it comes with the realization that the inner world is just a dream world, just like the outer world. They often call it the world of ghosts. And the annihilation of the inner world means that you give up your attachment and what's the word I want? The sense of the inner world having a particular meaning for you, because it is no more meaningful than the outer world. And this is the quality of understanding that the state of awakeness is dependent on non-attachment to both the outer and the inner. And this is the second stage of fana is where self-remembering, what we call in English self-remembering, marakabe, comes in. And there is a practice for this that one of the great masters of this time and place gave us, Mahmoud Thaganawi, that he called the present moment zikr. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. There are a lot of explanations of what this practice is. In my estimation, most of them are wrong. They say, oh, it's the verbal zikr. And it's not. The third stage.
Before you move on to that, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get the first one down, and I don't have it in front of me. Could you remind me?
Fana-i aham. A-H-K-A-M, ahkam, which is, I know these as Farsi, as Persian.
Yeah, I'm just putting them down as the Farsi version.
Yeah.
And that's the outer world?
Yeah, that's the outer world, and that's detaching yourself from it.
Yeah. Materiality, that kind of thing. Okay. On to 3.
3 is fana-i sifat. This is a form of experience that puts you in touch with the real world. And this is where, for the first time, you experience free will. This is where your conditioning is mostly set aside.
So how would we translate fana-i sifat directly?
We wouldn't.
I would probably say
Thank you.
in qualities.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Or attributes.
Yeah, attributes is actually a good one.
Thank you for that. I could. Good. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, this is a heavy duty one, because when you hit this stage, you cannot describe this to anybody who is not actually at this stage themselves. It doesn't even make sense. And then we get to the fourth stage, which is in some ways analogous to fana fila, which is fana izat in Persian, and dat in Arabic. The annihilation of essence. And I think of this as God hits reset on you. And so your essence dissolves and then gets replaced with the divine essence. And it's hard to talk about.
That sounds as though it's kind of like the die before we die.
Yeah, kind of like that. So most of this comes from one book, which is the Rashahat Ain al-Hayat, which is, I think it was compiled by Fakhruddin Ali Kashifi, whatever his name is, and is mostly he got it from Aladdin Attar.
So it seems it was, the author is Ali ibn Hussein
Yeah.
Shafi.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, or the compiler, however you want to say it. Anyway, the beads of dew from the tree of life, I think, is
Or the source of life. Yeah.
source of life. Yeah. Hard book to find. It is available in one English translation, and I think it was originally written in Persian, translated into Arabic. And I know there's an Urdu copy out there somewhere, but it is a good source material. So how do these teachings differ from what we think of as Sufism? What we think of as the Southern Sufis are definitely into ecstasy, ecstatic states, a lot of vocal zikr to put yourself into trances, that sort of thing. Yeah, Ian wants us to put the name of that book in the chat, and I will do that.
I got you covered.
You got me covered. Thank you.
So you were saying about ecstasy and stuff?
Yeah, and think of it like if we were to look at India, it would be a lot of bhakti yoga, the yoga of losing oneself, basically, and a lot of karma yoga. Bhakti yoga is devotional, karma yoga is work. And rather than telling you what it is, I am going to give you an example of a question and answer session, because most of the sheikhs of this way worked in question and answer sessions. And before that, you have to understand the main source of this path was this dude named Yusuf Hamadani. Hamadan is a city in northern Iran, and he was the one who founded this particular lineage. This lineage, we know his antecedents to a great extent because he can trace his silsila back to the Prophet Muhammad along 4 different lines. And so we know who his teachers were. He himself was exceptional. And most people who study this think that he was not so much the founder of this as the one who was selected to be the representative. And he traveled from Hamadan to Bukhara, where he set up a school. He brought with him 11 other Persians, and then was met by 1 Turk who became the foundation of his school. Out of this lineage, you get the Naqshbandis, the Kubresis, the Bektashis, and most importantly to us, the Yasevis. To name a few, there's a bunch of other smaller branches going off. But the kernel of this teaching originated here and was refined over generations. So this is from the Rashahat. And this is a dialogue between Alaluddin Attar and somebody.
Yeah, so this is a guy of Conference of the Birds fame. He's a big deal.
Yeah. So, question, what is the purpose of asceticism? Is it to overcome the passions of the flesh? Answer, no. The purpose is to break our dependence on the physical world. It is the means whereby we are able to rise to the worlds of spirit and truth. Question. Why is it that some pupils have to go the way of complete obedience and devotion to the teacher, whereas others seem to be able to go by themselves? Answer. When the seeker is at the beginning of the path, it is essential that he should bind his heart to his guide. The teacher and guide is like a mirror of divine truth, and by regarding the teacher in this way, the pupil is turned towards abandonment of the self, fana, and longing for God, jazba. Without this devotion, it is not possible for the eye of truth to open. It is for this reason that the seeker at the beginning of the path must first of all bind himself to his teacher until he can get free from the attractions of the external world. If he does not do this, he falls away from his search and he fails to get taste of nothingness. It is certain that it is wise to do everything in the right order. On the other hand, for the experienced seeker, this connection is no longer the answer because the experienced seeker has come to the reality of non-identification. For him, everything has become a mirror of the absolute perfection. For him, the things of this world have all the same value. This is the ocean. The ocean is no more than a stream, the sun no more than a mote in the sunshine. For those who have come to this degree, to look through the mirror of the teacher is a limitation and a defect. They must see for themselves, which is an interesting perspective.
Yeah. And, you know, they mention asceticism and stuff, and you see in other portions of the text that you have teachers asking students, why are you still doing asceticism? Aren't you over that? Like, let
Yeah.
it go. Yeah, because it's a practice that has its time, has its place. You take the lessons from it. And then the idea in this tradition is that you do stay in touch with the world, even as you're working within yourself to transform.
Question: what is the visible mark of the experienced seeker? Answer: the aim of the work is to pass beyond all interests, activities, and dependencies that are obstacles on the way to truth. Our Khoja Bahauddin used, for example, to treat everything as if it had no connection to himself. It would happen that if he wore a new kaftan, he would say this kaftan belonged to so-and-so, thus wearing it as if it were borrowed and not his own. Attar here was a student of Bahauddin Naqshband's. So when you see someone is free from attachment to anything or activity, you can be confident that he is already established on the path. Question: what are the main marks by which one can recognize one's progress? Answer: when you have wiped out from your vision the world of matter and the world of spirit, then you have reached fana. When you have abandoned the sense of your own existence, then this is emptiness within emptiness, fana-izat. That which holds the seeker back is his own existence. That which prevents him from having perfect knowledge is his inability to abandon relative knowledge. What prevents him from reaching this absolute spirit is his inability to give up his relative spirit. Question: can one give these things up by one's own will? Answer: it is desirable that there should be a guide with the spirit of Muhammad in him so that the heart can lose its own existence in the existence of the guide. But when emptiness reaches its final stage, then the guide is no longer required, because abandonment is finally something each soul must accomplish for himself. Question: is this abandonment only a matter of knowing that one's existence is really non-existence, or is it necessary to have something beyond this knowledge? Answer: it is necessary to add faith to knowledge. Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi in the Futuhat used the expression, the union of faith and vision. This union is an achievement that not every wise man can accomplish. It is gained by those who are true saints. Question: what can the sheikh and what can the seeker do himself? Answer: the great teachers have said that success comes only to those who work. Let me read that again. The great teachers have said that success comes only to those who work. The help a teacher can give is dependent on the readiness of the pupil to work and obey the instructions that he is given. Without zealous work, the deeper meanings will never be found. The accomplished man, that is the guide, can only influence the pupil for a few days. There is the saying, perseverance cannot be given. When we took part in the groups of Khwaja Bahauddin, we tried to hold on to remembering our aim from morning until night. Nevertheless, amongst the companions, there were only a few people who were able and capable of holding on for one day until nightfall. Question: when I am doing our exercise, sometimes I find myself in a different state, but I cannot hold on to it. What's wrong? Nothing is wrong. Hear that again. Nothing is wrong. It can well happen that that in the course of the effort to hold oneself present, the pupil finds that he is in a different state, but loses it at once. He should not, on this account, be depressed. With perseverance and effort, the transition becomes easier, and finally, it is established. By continuing the effort, the pupil can reach the same state as that of an angel. And when he is in this pure state, he is able to both see and accept his own nothingness. We're going to come back to this. It is in this way that the final liberation is attained. Question: do you approve to the visits of the tombs of the masters of former times? Answer: when you pay a visit to the tomb of one of the masters, one of the Khwajagan, you benefit to the extent that you have understood their teachings and placed your confidence in them. The more there is understanding and trust, the more such visits can be profitable. There is indeed a very great power that can be experienced when visiting sacred tombs, but you must understand that we communicate with the spirit of the masters also from a distance.
Meaning going to the tombs is not the only way to connect.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the Khwajagan are like they're
the beginning of this lineage.
Yeah, the ancestors of this tradition.
Yeah.
The masters of wisdom, capital M, capital W.
We are told, we are told to imitate our teacher, but we are also told that we should learn not to imitate. How do you explain this apparent contradiction? Answer: when you enter the path, you must of necessity copy because you do not know how to work from yourself. But through copying, you will certainly come to find the reality of yourself. Khwaja Bahauddin ordered me to imitate him closely, and the more faithfully I copied him, the more certain I was to get a clear result from my work. And I'm going to stop there. The dialogue goes on for quite a ways more, but that gives you a sense of some of the differences between that and, say, things that the Chishtis teach, or any of the more southerly Sufis.
Well, some people might not know. So
Yeah.
examples of that traditions, the practices of that tradition tend to be you are dedicated to the teacher. You are doing tasks for them. You're cleaning their house. You are completely surrendered to their directions, and in return they are responsible for you. They are kind of like your spiritual parent. So there's very much this dependency on the teacher, taking direction from them, not really making your own choices, that kind of thing. What
Yeah,
else?
that's a good one because that is a major difference. The teachers of this lineage never allowed people to worship them. They never allowed people to treat them as if they were special.
Yeah, so this is different from a guru disciple model.
Yeah.
There is a stage in which you are learning through imitation. But what that means is that the teacher has a responsibility to embody their teaching. It's not just do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. And learning, I mean, we all learn by imitation. When I teach somebody martial arts back in the day, I would show them, do like this. They would try and do like that. Then I would show them a little bit more. But after a certain time, I didn't have to show them because they had embodied what it was that I was showing them. And then they could do what they were doing and create lines from that one learning themselves.
Yep. So it's like a contextual dedication rather than your whole, you
Yeah.
know, like you're just shutting down your sense of self-direction. You're not doing that necessarily. Osama.
Yeah, this is very interesting. It's interesting topic. I read the book, and it is definitely an interesting read.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it
And
is
the
it is a lot.
translation
And
is sometimes not the best.
Right. That makes it challenging too for
yeah,
those of
and
us who
also
can't
to
read the
see the
original.
really the shortcomings of some of these um masters, right?
Right.
To
Yeah.
see um some of them are racists, some of them are sexists.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of the greatest masters were sexist.
so it's interesting. It's interesting to read through. But also, what I wanted to share is that there's this thing where part of the metaphysical um, teaching, when it's being taught through a craft like martial arts, let's say, or like music, or like um,
Spoon carving.
masonry or carving or whatever. There's a there's a reality that's being transferred within the craft itself. I think part of the challenge becomes when there's no real embodiment of the knowledge of the teaching, and it's just metaphysical only, and it's being passed down. So I can see the challenge in there, to go through the, let's say, the four levels that you guys shared. Fana fil ahkam, which from a purely metaphysical level can be just the Sharia,
Yeah.
right? You got to lose yourself in the laws that are given to you, right? Divine laws, whatever. Where to learn that in music form, let's say I'm trying to learn how to play the drum, to lose myself in ahkam, which means to really embody the form of holding the drum. Let's say I'm learning the djembe, the form of hitting the bass, hitting the higher pitch sound, in order to really embody. This is, yes, now it makes sense. Oh, I need to imitate my teacher as he or she is striking the drum. I have to embody that form. And then going into a different level of annihilation in af'al, or actions, realizing, getting to a point of realization from a metaphysical standpoint, is that there's only one agent in all reality, al-fa'al, the agent that's doing all of that work, right? So I can see that the importance of having a craft or having some physical thing that's needing to be transmuted through the teacher to the disciple, whether it's martial art. I'm assuming that's probably like a really good way to teach these lessons metaphysically, but to kind of bring them to the body.
Yeah, we
and
haven't even touched on that part yet.
yeah,
But
and
that is critical, the craft part, yes.
yeah, one of the interesting things about this particular lineage is, yes, they built masjid, they built madrasa, but they also built craft guilds. And they trained people into how to do particular jobs. So you could come to, if you were one of the students, they would send you to their craft hall, and you would learn how to carve, or you would learn how to sculpt, or you would learn how to weave, or you would learn all of these actual physical crafts exactly for the reason that you described.
When you say this lineage, do you mean the
I
Yesevi?
mean the Khwajagan,
The
the
Nas, yeah,
greater lineage of the Khwajagan. Yes.
yeah, the farther back one, yeah.
Yeah. The Yesevi
Yeah,
in particular were into physical movement, and that's a story for another time.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
yeah.
and I can see the political influence on some of these teachings as well, right? Where sometimes some of these teachers were put in jail, exiled, and it would make
Murdered.
sense. Yeah, murdered, right? So it's like sometime throughout time, it's like, oh yeah, we have to make sure to include certain parts of Sharia, or we have to make sure to include some of these teachings in what we're saying, at least to the public, so that my life is not in danger and I'm not exiled for pretty much my entire life.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that plays into these teachings as far as when they solidify into organization.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is a lineage now.
Yeah.
Right?
Because this touches on another detail in that what we're calling the Southern Sufis, they were much more broadly speaking, I think Sufis in general have always kind of towed the line between, unorthodoxy and orthodoxy to keep themselves safe, or, risk falling into exile, or being executed, whatever, assassinated. The Northern Sufis definitely were not BFFs with orthodoxy, but they did not make enemies of orthodoxy. So they had to have this professed alignment with, as you said, Sharia, sacred law, the rules and regulations and duties and all of that stuff. But then they would say, and we have these other things that we must do if we're seeking to be free of our own, I'm going to use that word, detritus. Because the difference here is that the Southern Sufis were, we're looking for expressing love of God and going to paradise in closeness with the divine. And then this Northern Sufis tended to take this a little bit further in that, of course, love is the basis and connection with the divine means everything. But in order to really experience that, we have to work through our stuff. Otherwise, great, we're in paradise and we get to live another fantasy, as opposed to seeing what is real and what is true and what is the deepest, most meaningful connection with the divine.
Yeah. And this particular lineage understood the necessity for Sharia in that it was a fundamental basis for ethical behavior.
At its best, that's
Yeah,
what it
when
is.
you boil the teachings of the Prophet and the Quran down to its essence, to the soup of the soup of the soup, as it were. It comes down to, don't be an asshole. That's what it's saying. Don't be a jerk. Treat people in a decent way. Treat yourself in a decent way. Everything else is fluff.
Family. Yeah.
Yeah, so in that sense, Sharia is very important because it does give you a guide to an ethical foundation until you build that within yourself internally, and you know what the ethical foundation is.
It lives in you now, as opposed to it needing to be imposed upon you.
And when the masters talk about nothingness, becoming nothing, annihilation, they are specifically talking about understanding that the content of the ego is fundamentally meaningless. You strip that away, then the content of the essence is also fundamentally meaningless, and you strip that away, and what you have left is pure being. And that being is universal, and it is one. And that is a very heavy state. Inshallah, we will all find it in this lifetime.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
But we see that expressed in many of these teachers, especially, like Yusuf Hamadani was known as being someone who was embracing of people from all different walks of life, of all different religious leanings, because that was how he saw the world, was he was looking at that underlying sense of all is one. How do we live in the world while holding that to be true? And that was a pretty deep inspiration for those who came after him. Which sometimes, unfortunately, was lost along the way. But it's something that we can all strive towards if this is the path that we choose.
Yeah, and that's important to remember. Because just because you are connected to a particular lineage doesn't mean that you got it. There was a time when the Naqshbandis, Naqshis as we call them, were great teachers. Now, a lot of the branches of that tariqah just become a cult. And you get to follow them and worship the sheikhs and all of that sort of stuff. And it's great if you want to remain a child for your entire life. But there are what I think of as the wild mountain Naqshbandis, which you can still find in areas of Turkey and further east that have not lost their tradition.
The undomesticated ones.
Yes, undomesticated Naqshis.
I mean, that's kind of, if we really want to, delineate it that way, we could think of this as, the domesticated versus arguably less domesticated Sufis. And of course, over time, things tend toward domestication. So perhaps this is an opportunity to think about that and push back against it. Jonathan.
Yes, Jonathan, tell us things.
Yeah, it seems to me that the northern path is that is a lonelier path and a more courageous path. And the reason why I say that is if I was to have been a student in a monastery, I would say, yes, I'd be lonely, but by comparison to living a life of solitude in the crowd, in other words, living in the city, trying to keep a state of solitude, to me, that's a much lonelier path, where I'm surrounded by people having fun and being entertained, yet I'm just there in my state of solitude, but I have to interact with them because that's my lesson is to be in the crowd, in the city.
You ain't wrong, man. You ain't wrong.
And the courageous part, Noah was talking about surrendering. So if I put myself back as a student in a monastery, well, yeah, I surrender my house, I surrender my car, all my valuable possessions, but I'm going to be taken care of in the monastery. It's not such a big surrender. But to live in the world, in the city, I need a place to live. I need my car. I can't surrender those, actually physically surrender them, otherwise I can't live in the city. But I have to surrender my importance and value in my possessions.
Yeah, much harder.
Much harder.
Yeah, I would say you are dead on in what you're saying. I can't, I love to argue with you, but in this case, I can't.
Thanks, Jonathan. I mean, that brings to the fore, to some extent, why this can be, as we're saying, this can be a harder path for people. You're like, why? Many people do not care about the idea of quote unquote liberation. Like, what does that even mean? What are you liberating yourself from? And yeah, it is these attachments, and some people really don't care to do that.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
And that is one of the big things about this particular path is the concept of itlaq, which literally means liberation. And you don't much hear about that in other places in the sense that it's used in this path. And I suspect that our understanding of it came from interaction with like the Taoists and the Buddhists, because that was their main thing. And we may have learned a lot about that from them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell
nothingness.
Yeah, don't tell the Wahhabis about this.
Yeah. Yes. We need.
Yeah, so I come from India, so I'm very well aware of at least Sufism as it is portrayed in like India and like generally the Southern Sufis sects, right? I can definitely see like people almost worshipping like literally going into the falling down and prostrating for the masters, right? And I mean, that actually brings about a very negative light to Sufism in a way
Yeah.
that yeah. And that was one of the reasons why I got, at first I thought that, they might not be, something in there for me because, okay, I might surrender to a sheikh, but what if he leads me to shaitan, for example, right? Like
Yeah.
to the dark places, right? And that's why I mean, to be honest, I didn't know that there's a path of work in a sense that there's a path where you can work alongside the sheikh instead of you surrendering and sheikh showing you the way. So I'm still a bit confused about like I have three things. Like one is the sheikh gives you teachings, like things to do, and you follow along with that. And then there is one thing of complete surrender, like which is there. I'm just thinking about a middle way where you have like love and surrender for sheikh, but you still maintain your identity in that process. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we strive for. Not necessarily your identity because we're working on polishing that, but
your agency.
Yeah, your agency is a
Yeah.
better word. And that's important. Our last teacher often taught through work in a pizza parlor. He owned a pizza parlor for a number of years. And he would invite some of us who were his students to come and work next to him. And when we went there, he wasn't bossing people around and telling people what to do. He rolled up his sleeves and started working and had us work alongside him. And he taught us how to work. He taught us how to be efficient in our movements, how to understand the process, the step-by-step process of going from a bag of flour to a finished pizza, and how to be present while doing all of that. But at no time did he ever want anybody to worship him or
Kiss the ring or
kiss the ring. Yeah. His thing was, a true teacher does not point to himself. He points to Allah at all times there.
and you can deeply appreciate
Oh,
and
yeah.
respect and have a sense of trust in the teacher.
I mean,
But
I love that man more than almost anybody.
yeah.
And I would have done anything he asked me to do because I trusted him not to ask me to do anything really stupid. But he never required any of that. I mean, he
Yeah,
didn't
I think
require
surrender.
basic politeness.
Yeah. I think surrender comes as a result of the realizations which the pupil has, right? Or like the path where,
Yeah,
out of
and you do not surrender to the teacher. You surrender to the divine reality. As we like to say, you surrender to Al-Haq.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we use that term rather than any of the other terms for our basic description of the divine reality. Because the understanding of our path is that God is not a grumpy old dude in the sky who's scowling at you all the time. God is not human. God is a transcendent force beyond the universe. And it is that which is truly real. And so to try and anthropomorphize this leads to delusion. And so Allah has become a proper name. And so we use Al-Haq to remind ourselves that this is beyond proper names. This is beyond personality, beyond identity. It is the fundamental truth of the universe and beyond. So we don't care about people who think that we're groovy, right? We care about people who want to be awake and who are willing to do the work for that, because we can't do that work for you.
Yeah.
If I can jump in here.
Yes, please.
So I think that's where the actual kind of like going back to the whole craft idea, right? If I'm learning from a teacher to, I don't know, make pizza or pizza dough or whatever it is, and the teacher tells me, mix the sauce this particular way. This is the recipe. And then I'm like, okay, I did it a couple of times. Now I feel I have some kind of idea of it. So I'm starting to do my own thing. And the teacher says, no, go back how I told you to do it. And this level of surrender to what the teacher is saying, because I don't know any better. My taste buds are not refined enough to tell that the sauce tastes different actually with the extra ingredients that I'm adding to it, right? So this level of surrender that comes with humility to what the teacher is saying. Now, obviously, this is where the line, how would one know and discern if the teacher is just, full of shit or is actually looking out for you?
Taste the pizza.
What was that,
Right.
Michelle?
Taste the pizza.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like as a student, if I don't have refinement of taste, right? Then I wouldn't know better if it's martial arts and now my form is different. And I don't know that if I keep this form in 2-3 years, I'm gonna hurt my shoulder really bad. The teacher knows probably from experiences because he probably tried to do that and then hurt his or her shoulder. So that level of surrender, at least that's how I see surrender when it comes to these kind of these kind of topics. Like, look, I'm surrendering really not to just the teacher, but to the knowledge, or hopefully to the knowledge and experience that the teacher has in this particular area. Again, it becomes really challenging when it's only metaphysical, when it's only intellectual, or like when it's only metaphysical. It really becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our last teacher gave a list of things that you can use externally for having a sense of whether a teacher is actually a teacher. And I will pass those on right now. First is their life is in line with Sharia, in the sense of they have an ethical foundation to their life. It's a big deal. Second, when they speak what is in your heart. They don't go off and talk about themselves. Third, they never point to themselves, they point to God. All the time, somebody says, "Oh, my sheikh," and he goes, "No, there, up there." Those three things will get you through a lot of problems. And the fourth is that when you are with your teacher, you feel good because for a while he carries part of your burden for you. That is the grace of the teacher. A gift that Allah gives to somebody who is a teacher is that they can lift a little bit of the pressure off the person. So those four things help to create an understanding that you're dealing with somebody who is actually working on the path. None of this is perfect. Understand this. None of this is perfect.
Sometimes a teacher for you is going to be different than a
Yeah.
teacher for someone else. So you keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. And following the instructions of the Sharia does not mean dress like an Arab or dress like a 19th century Turk or whatever.
Costumes not required.
Costumes not required. I mean, we love the cool hats, but you're not required to wear one.
I actually, when I was initiated under our sheikh, I had women in the group saying, you don't have to wear a hijab. At the time, I was a hijabi, and they were saying, it's kind of a quality of ours that we blend into our communities. So hijab is not something that is required. It was even kind of like they were like, you don't have, it was almost like they were discouraging me from wearing it because our job is to be part of the community rather than distinguished from it.
Yeah.
And in my culture, of course, people don't tend to wear hijab for the most part. So
if we went someplace else, like if we went and visited Wa'el, you'd probably wear a scarf.
yeah, of some kind, I probably would because it's not you know, I have my own style, I have my own tastes and personality and stuff, and I can show that through whatever I'm wearing.
Yeah.
So,
And I would probably dress slightly differently.
yeah. So it's it's it is not our way to put on airs.
Yeah. Or
Flat out.
to do costume dramas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Sometimes I love all
behind me, you see guys on camels. If I were on a camel, I would want to dress like that. If I were on a camel in the desert, that's how you want to dress. It is the smartest way to dress possible. In the city, not so much. And that's one of the contexts. Does that make sense? Good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that makes sense a lot. And like just on that, one of the things which I was thinking, like you talked about the teachers sharing the burden, like of the heart, right? And like from my understanding, there is a lot of transmission, like heart to heart transmission, like Sina bas Sina is generally called in like in Sufism, or at least what I heard of. So like what are your thoughts on that? Like how much of the knowledge transmission is hidden, so to speak?
Probably no more than 10%. Just a little bit. And it's not the knowledge. It is a little bit of the energy that allows you to find the knowledge.
Like a kickstart,
Yeah, like a Kickstarter, jumpstart, zap.
an encouragement.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I thought a majority of that is actually in the ghaib, uh, or in the hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was taught to mistrust people who tell you, oh, it's all hidden. There was one branch of the Naqshbandis that were at one point very popular here in the States. And they would say, oh, every other parika works from the bottom up. We work from the top down. So the sheikh is working on you and you don't notice any changes until finally one day, boom, there you are. And it's all him doing it. And it's like, yeah, pull the other one. It's got bells on.
Leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just one of those things that is very evidently different for
Yeah.
us.
And this circles back to the Silk Road.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if you 2 points that are sort of random that I wanted to make.
Okay.
So,
Makes them.
it is Silk Road related, but in your dialogue of Attar with his students, you mentioned something about like the purity of angels and embodying that, and you said we
Yeah.
might revisit that. Did you have anything you wanted to share about that?
No, not at this point. We would go off into a certain divergence that we don't need to do.
Yeah, okay. So just a little touchstone for another time, perhaps. You mentioned Al-Haq earlier, and that's interesting because in this region, as we discussed earlier, you know, we had the Magi who were active in the region.
Yes.
And we had Zoroastrianism still active, and this idea of the spirit of truth was very present, right?
Yeah. And Yusuf Hamadani came from a Magian tradition in his family. So he would have been very, very clear on this idea of the spirit of truth.
Yeah, so obviously there was a lot learned from that tradition that
Don't tell
inspired.
the Wahhabis.
I know, this is what's so dangerous to talk about, but it's important because it shows how, you know, we already had these names of Allah, and all of that. And we already know that the divine in Islam has endless qualities. And of course, there are going to be overlaps between traditions about how to describe and experience those qualities. And when it comes to al-haq, knowing that we need to find a way to share about this sense of reality that exists beyond our dream world and our own ego nonsense and all of that stuff. As it turns out, al-haq is a beautiful word. And learning that from the Zoroastrians, perhaps, this spirit of truth, this ultimate reality, I just think that it's wonderful to perceive how we have shared these truths across traditions.
Yeah, and that is the basis of today's talk, is that the Silk Road allowed all of these different traditions to hang out with each other and to discuss how they saw the world. And it's not as if you would get converted to somebody else's religion, but you would take the understanding of what they were saying and apply it to your own tradition to make your tradition bigger, broader, have more understanding.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
And
that was,
also, oh, sorry.
I
Also,
was,
not to forget the influence of Neoplatonism on all of this esoteric mysticism
oh
stuff,
yeah.
Yeah,
right? The whole idea of emanation and tajalli in Sufism and all of that. Yeah, there's a role of that kind of philosophy as well,
yeah.
and how it played a role in all of it.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. And all you have to do is read Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd and their arguments with each other over that stuff. But the Khajagan tended to move away from Neoplatonic thought for different reasons.
Yeah, the hardcore rationalism was something that was very characteristic of Southern Sufism,
Yeah,
alongside the mysticism in which you're getting annihilated in the Sheikh and all of that stuff. So it had its own complexity. There's nothing, basic in the colloquial sense about Southern Sufism either. It's just different.
yeah.
James.
Would it be getting terribly off topic if you elaborated why the Khajagan moved away from Neoplatonism?
Because they thought that rationality could only take you so far.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that a lot of the Platonic ideas did not go all the way to the end, that they were caught in the world of forms.
Okay.
Just briefly. And this is not exactly accurate, but it would take another 2 hours to go through all of the thoughts. But
Will serve as a
I
gloss.
formally put in my request for a future video on that topic.
Okay. They also, simply put, they knew that book learning could take you in circles.
Yeah.
Theological debates, all of that stuff. Like, what a waste of time that can be. And they perceived that.
This is probably my own ignorance demonstrating itself. So Neoplatonism at this time, was it totally divorced from direct experience and mystical exercise? Right. Okay.
No, but it went in a different direction. And I'm sure that there were plenty of people who practiced that, who received illumination from it. This is not to say that it's a false teaching or anything. It's just a different teaching.
Okay.
And it's not the one that we like.
Yeah. Oh, Yusuf had to take off. That's okay.
Oh, bummer.
So Silk Road, where were we?
We were saying that this is the basis. Our talk this evening is actually going to be something of a continuation of this. This evening, the talk is entitled The Dervish and the Tao. And it will be a story about a dervish that travels from Bukhara to China and what he found along the way. And it will touch entirely on topics like this.
Yeah, so that should be a lot of fun and a different approach to this idea of drawing upon all of these traditions in order to enrich the Sufi tradition at large. And for it to happen in a very organic, natural, humane, inspiring sort of way. Well, I'm looking forward to this evening.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, so do we have any last thoughts or questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering when I was hearing all that about the northern and southern, I was wondering how much of an analogy that there might be between the idea of Mahayana and Hinayana in the Buddhist.
Don't know enough about it.
Okay,
Definitely worth
no problem.
investigating. If anyone wants to follow up on that.
Yeah, take a look at that and tell us what you've come up with.
Thanks, Ian. Anybody else?
Who have we not heard from?
A few people. Oh,
Somebody else ran
took
away.
off. She doesn't want to answer questions. That's okay. Aaron, how are you doing with this talk? What's coming up for you, if anything?
Yeah, are we crazy or what?
Well, I think it's really interesting. I was just kind of talking with my partner the other day about how it seemed like, the Sufis in Central Asia were just kind of like the most geographically well positioned to talk to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, I guess pick up on all of these various influences.
Definitely, as we can see. Yeah, and we reap the benefits of that today. Alhamdulillah, I guess we could say. Yeah. Very cool, Aaron. Thank you. Halilu, what's on your mind?
This topic is right up my alley. I love it. I'm so glad you decided to focus on this, and I'm really hoping that you guys will dig into this more in future talks.
Yeah, let us know, if you have any points of focus that you might enjoy us thinking about digging into, because you never know. Might be a cool topic for us.
Well, I'm with James. I'm very inclined toward Neoplatonism. So to hear a view that is, that goes against the grain of that is helpful to me, so that I don't get immersed in a tradition that I'm more inclined to.
Makes sense to me. Yeah. I think, it was Greek philosophy at large. They just had a different perspective on the world than much of the rest of the quote unquote civilized world did. And that may be the result of, say, the influence of more indigenous traditions in the region, that kind of thing. So, it's something that we all might take some time to investigate further.
Yeah, it's really important to defamiliarize views that one might have a tendency to get habituated into. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I have a good friend who is an expert on Neoplatonism, and have to see if I can get him to join us. He's now closer to us. He moved from Kosovo or Bosnia to Italy. So he's a little bit closer.
And Munib offers that someone said Socrates could be a prophet. I mean, people have said that the Buddha could be a prophet. So it's just
but
one
the
of those
Buddha
things.
said that he wasn't a prophet.
Right, yeah.
And
Like
I
a
think that
messenger in
Socrates
Islam.
would have disagreed with prophethood as well. He was an irascible fellow.
All right. I think as long as no one has any last call thoughts, we are all set for today.
Yeah. So let me shift over to Brady Bunch mode. There we go.
Yeah, Khalil says, depends on what you mean by prophet. And
yeah,
that's exactly what Mushtaq was saying. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here. It's been cool having some new faces present and some really beloved familiar faces present too. Thank you so much. And we will see you later this evening at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time to talk about the Sufi and the Tao.
The dervish and the Tao. It's got to alliterate properly.
Dervish and the Tao. All right, we can wave to each other, wave to everybody watching on the replay,
Bye,
and
folks.
see you soon.